The jungle was alive with sounds, yet it felt strangely empty to him. The human explorer, Daniel, had traveled far across the alien world, and now he sat alone beside a small fire. The flames flickered and danced, sending shadows crawling across. The towering trees, the roots of the jungle twisted like giant snakes, and mist hung low on the ground, every sound the crack of a branch. The call of an unseen creature echoed through the night like a warning. Daniel adjusted the canvas tent he had set up, its faint glow offering the only comfort in the cold wilderness. The temperature was dropping fast, and the damp air bit into his skin. He pulled his jacket tighter around him, but his eyes kept drifting to the edge of the firelight. That was where he saw her. The tiny alien girl stood just beyond the glow, her body trembling as the chill crept into her bones. She had long dark hair that flowed down her back, her skin pale against the shadows, and her ears pointed delicately upward. Her clothes were made of rough fabric, barely enough to shield her from the night air. She hugged her arms to her chest, shivering, but she did not step closer to the fire. Her large eyes watched him with both caution and pride, as if she would rather freeze than ask for help. Daniel's heart stirred at the sight. He had seen many strange beings since landing on this world, but this girl was different. There was something fragile, yet fierce about her, a strength hidden beneath her small frame. He could see her breath misting in the cold, her lips pressed together tightly. If she stayed out there much longer, she might not last the night. "Come closer," Daniel said gently, his voice low but firm. She did not move, only tilted her head slightly, her eyes glowing faintly in the firelight. He could sense her hesitation, the mistrust in her gaze. He tried again, his tone softer. "It's too cold out there. You'll freeze. Come inside the tent." The girl shifted her weight, her bare feet pressing into the damp earth. She looked down, then back at him, as if weighing his words against the warnings she must have heard about humans. Her people had always seen humans as intruders, dangerous and untrustworthy, but tonight, in this endless jungle, the cold seemed more dangerous than him. Finally, she stepped forward. The firelight revealed more of her face, delicate, almost innocent, yet with an edge of stubbornness. She moved slowly, carefully, like a wild creature, afraid of being trapped. Daniel held out a hand, but she ignored it, choosing to keep her distance. Still, she came closer until the warmth of the fire touched her skin. Daniel studied her as she stood there. Her breathing was uneven, her shoulders still tense, but her trembling lessened. The silence between them was heavy, broken only by the crackle of burning wood. Outside, the jungle roared with distant cries, strange beasts moving in the darkness. The girl flinched at the sound, but tried to hide it. Daniel noticed, and his chest tightened. She was just as scared as she was cold. "Inside the tent," he said again, pointing to the faintly glowing canvas. Her eyes narrowed, sharp and suspicious. For a moment, he thought she would refuse, but then a gust of icy wind swept through the clearing, and she shivered violently. Her pride fought her need for warmth, but survival won. She nodded once, almost unwillingly, and followed him. Inside the tent, the air was warmer, though still heavy with the damp smell of the jungle. A lantern burned softly, casting golden light over the small space. Daniel settled to one side, giving her room. She stood at the entrance, hesitant, her hand brushing the fabric as if testing it. Then she lowered herself onto the ground, folding her legs neatly beneath her. Her eyes flickered toward him, sharp and alert, as if waiting for a trap. Daniel spoke quietly, trying to ease the tension. "You'll be warmer here. No harm will come to you, I promise." The girl did not answer. Her silence was louder than any words, but her breathing slowed, and the color returned to her cheeks as the warmth wrapped around her. He watched her in the soft glow, wondering who she was and why she was alone in such a dangerous place. She looked so small, yet there was something in her eyes, something old, something burdened. She was not just a child lost in the woods. She was something more, something the jungle itself seemed to guard. Outside, the night deepened, the sounds growing darker, closer. The fire outside flickered, shadows moving against the tent walls. Daniel's instincts sharpened, a chill running through him. He had brought her inside to protect her from the cold, but now he wondered if he had invited danger into his camp. The girl looked at him then, truly looked, her eyes deep and unreadable, and in that moment, Daniel knew this night would not be simple. He had thought he was saving her from the cold, but what happened next would change everything. The tent glowed softly with the lantern's light, casting golden shapes across the fabric walls. Daniel sat with his back against his pack, his eyes fixed on the small alien girl who now sat cross-legged near the warmth. Her long hair fell like a curtain across her shoulders, the strands shimmering faintly as the light touched them. She kept her arms wrapped around herself, though she was no longer trembling. Her gaze flicked toward the fire outside, and then back to him, cautious, questioning. Daniel broke the silence with a gentle tone. "You must be hungry," he said, pulling a ration pack from his bag. The girl tilted her head, her sharp ears twitching slightly, and for a moment she said nothing. When he opened the pack and placed a piece of dried food in front of her, she hesitated. Her fingers hovered above it, then pulled back. It was clear she did not trust him completely, yet her eyes betrayed her hunger. Bright and restless as she tried to resist, finally, she reached forward, her small hand trembling as she picked up the food. She sniffed it first, almost like a wild creature, then took a cautious bite. Her lips pressed together as she chewed slowly, her expression unreadable, but Daniel noticed the way her shoulders relaxed slightly, as if she had accepted a piece of peace between them. The fire crackled outside, and for the first time that night, the air inside the tent felt less heavy, better. Daniel asked quietly. She glanced at him, her eyes glowing faintly in the lantern light, and gave the smallest nod. Her voice, when it finally came, was soft and musical. "Humans, always bringing fire, always changing the night," she whispered. Daniel frowned slightly, her words carrying weight he could not yet understand. "You've met humans before?" he asked, leaning forward. Her eyes darkened, and she looked away. "Not like you," she said at last, her voice almost bitter. The silence stretched, filled only by the sound of the jungle outside. Distant growls echoed through the trees, sending shivers across the tent fabric. The girl's ears twitched again, and her gaze sharpened. She whispered something in her own tongue, a string of sounds Daniel could not recognize. When he asked her what it meant, she shook her head. "It means the hunters walk tonight," she said quietly. Daniel straightened, his senses sharpening. "Hunters?" he asked. She nodded, her eyes serious now. "They are not like you. They do not speak. They only kill. They follow me." Her small frame seemed to shrink further, as if the memory itself pressed down on her. Daniel felt a strange pull in his chest, an urge to shield her from whatever chased her. "Why are they after you?" he pressed gently. The girl's lips trembled, but she forced the words out. "Because I am the last of my kin. Because they fear what I am." Her voice broke slightly at the end. Though her face remained proud, Daniel realized then that she was not only fragile, but burdened with something far heavier than her size suggested. The lantern light flickered, throwing shadows across her face. She looked younger and older at the same time, innocent, yet scarred by pain. Daniel leaned closer, lowering his voice. "You don't have to fear me. Not tonight," he said firmly. Her eyes darted to his, and for the first time, he saw doubt break inside them. It was not mistrust this time, but something softer, something that could grow. Outside, a loud snap rang through the forest, like a branch breaking under heavy steps. The girl froze, her breath catching in her throat. Her wide eyes glowed with alarm as she whispered, "They are near." Daniel reached for his weapon, his hand steady, though his heart pounded. The night beyond the tent seemed to close in, the sounds of insects falling silent one by one. Only the fire crackled, defiant, against the growing darkness. The girl's small hand clenched the fabric of her garment as she moved closer to him without thinking. Her body trembled not from cold this time, but from fear. Daniel felt her presence beside him. Fragile yet unyielding, he could see it in her eyes, the battle between pride and survival. She wanted to run, but she also wanted to believe in him. "Stay close," he whispered, his voice steady. She nodded once, her ears twitching at every sound outside. The jungle growls deepened, a low rumble rolling through the trees. Shadows moved against the glowing canvas, shapes shifting just out of sight. The tent felt smaller now, every breath heavier as the night pressed in around them. The fire between them flickered, casting warmth and light, and in that fragile circle of safety, two strangers sat side by side, a human and a tiny alien girl, divided by worlds, yet united by danger. Neither of them spoke, yet something unspoken passed between them. Trust, fragile but growing. Daniel knew the night was far from over. What happened next would decide whether they lived or vanished into the jungle's endless dark. The night outside pressed heavier against the tent. Every sound from the jungle seemed sharper, louder, as if the trees themselves held their breath. Daniel's hand rested near his weapon, his eyes fixed on the moving shadows crawling across the tent walls. Beside him, the tiny alien girl sat rigid, her ears twitching, her gaze locked on the faint light of the lantern. She did not blink often, as though every flicker of darkness could hide a threat waiting to strike. For a long moment, neither spoke. The silence between them was heavy, carrying unasked questions. Finally, Daniel broke it, his voice low but steady. "Who are these hunters? And why are they after you?" The girl turned slowly toward him, her expression tight, her lips pressed together in thought. She seemed to fight with herself, torn between silence and truth. "They are called the Night Stalkers," she whispered at last. Her voice was thin, almost carried away by the crackle of the fire outside. "They come when the moon is hidden. They take what they want. They leave nothing but bones." Her fingers dug into the fabric of her clothing, clutching it as if to ground herself. Daniel's jaw tightened, the weight of her words settling like stone in his chest. "And you?" he asked, his eyes never leaving hers. "Why you?" She looked away, her dark hair falling like a curtain to hide her face. When she spoke again, it was barely audible. "Because I am the last of my blood. They say my kind carries power. They fear what they cannot control." Her voice trembled, but her eyes glimmered with defiance when she glanced back at him. Daniel felt a pang of fragile, yet burning with pride. She had survived when others had not. The jungle outside groaned with the weight of the night. Something moved, a distant rustle, followed by a low growl that made the girl shiver. Daniel shifted closer to the entrance, scanning the shadows, but then her voice pulled him back, soft, almost pleading. "You should not be near me. If they find me, they will kill you too." Daniel turned to her, his expression unshaken. "Let them try," he said, his tone calm but sharp. The girl's eyes widened slightly, as if she had not expected such words. For a second, the mask of pride slipped, and he saw a flicker of something else, hope. It lingered only briefly before she looked down again, whispering, "Humans speak boldly, but they do not always stay." Daniel leaned forward, his voice firm. "Then you have not met the right human." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. The girl looked up, her eyes reflecting the glow of the lantern, studying him as if trying to decide whether to believe. Suddenly, the tent shook with a thud. Something heavy had landed outside. Both of them froze, breath caught in their throats. The fire beyond the canvas hissed and sparked as if reacting to the presence. Daniel reached for his weapon, his body tense. The girl pressed her hands together tightly, murmuring something in her alien tongue. "What are you saying?" Daniel whispered quickly. She glanced at him, her eyes wide. A prayer. Her words were filled with both fear and strength. Outside, another growl rumbled, closer this time. Shadows swept across the glowing fabric of the tent, sharp and unnatural. The jungle had fallen. silent again, and that silence was more terrifying than noise. Daniel's grip tightened, but before he could rise, the girl leaned closer, her voice urgent. "If they break through, run," she whispered. Her eyes burned fiercely, even through her fear, but Daniel shook his head, his voice iron. "I don't run. Not when someone needs me." The words struck her harder than she expected. Her chest rose sharply, as though something inside her cracked open. No one had said such things to her before, not since her kin were taken. For the first time, she looked at him not with suspicion, but with something else, trust, beginning to bloom. Fragile and small but real, the shadows outside moved again, but this time they faded back into the jungle. The growls retreated, replaced once more by the distant hum of insects. The danger had not passed, but it had stepped away. Waiting for another moment, inside the tent, both of them exhaled slowly, though their hearts still pounded. The girl finally leaned back, her shoulders sagging from the tension. Her voice came softer, calmer now. "You are strange, human. You do not act as they told me. You do not look at me with hunger or hate." Daniel's lips curved slightly, not quite a smile. "Maybe they told you the wrong story," he said. She studied him for a long while, her gaze thoughtful, searching. The firelight caught in her eyes, making them glow with a quiet intensity. In that moment, she seemed less like a frightened girl and more like a mystery unfolding. And Daniel realized that whatever she carried, inside her fear, pride, secret sit, was only the beginning of something far greater. The night outside remained dangerous. The hunters still stalked the jungle, waiting for their chance. But inside the tent, within the fragile glow of the fire, two souls sat closer than before. A human and a tiny alien girl, bound now, not by survival alone, but by whispers shared in the dark, and both of them knew that what happened next would decide not just the night, but everything that came after. The lantern's glow flickered as if the flame itself trembled with the weight of the night. Daniel leaned back against the tent wall, his weapon still close at hand, but his eyes remained on the girl. She sat opposite him, her small form half lit by the firelight that spilled through the canvas. Her head was slightly bowed, her hair falling like shadows across her face. For a long while, she did not speak, though Daniel could see the battle inside her. Finally, her voice came, soft and fragile. "My people are gone," she whispered, her fingers tightening round the edge of her garment. Daniel's chest tightened at the sound of her words. "Gone?" he asked carefully. She lifted her head, then, her eyes wet but fierce. "Taken, hunted, destroyed. The Night Stalkers left no one. I am the last." Daniel drew in a slow breath. Her words hung heavy in the air, heavier than the cold. "Outside, you've been alone all this time?" he asked. The girl nodded once, a stiff motion. Her lips trembled, but her voice remained sharp. "They call me cursed. They say my blood carries light that burns them. That is why they want me dead." Daniel's brows furrowed. "Light," he repeated, trying to understand. She closed her eyes, and for a moment her body seemed to glow faintly. A soft shimmer pulsed beneath her skin, like starlight hidden in fragile flesh. It faded as quickly as it appeared, leaving Daniel breathless. He stared at her, his mind racing. "You're not just running from them. You're carrying something they fear." Her shoulders tensed. "Yes," she whispered, "and I cannot control it. If I try, it consumes me." Her voice cracked then, breaking through the mask she always wore. Daniel felt the raw truth in her words, the weight of power she never asked for. She hugged her knees to her chest, looking suddenly smaller, younger. Her pride had cracked open, showing him the pain she carried alone. Daniel's heart pulled him closer. "You don't have to carry it alone anymore," he said firmly. Her eyes snapped to his, wide and uncertain. "You speak as if it is simple," she said bitterly. "But your kind does not stay. They use, they leave." Her words were sharp, but her voice trembled, as if daring him to prove otherwise. Daniel leaned forward, his tone steady. Then maybe you've met the wrong kind of human. She blinked, stunned at the echo of his earlier words. Her lips parted, but no sound came. For the first time, she looked at him not as a stranger, not as a danger, but as someone who might actually stay. The jungle outside growled. Again, low and distant. The sound reminded them both of the danger waiting. But inside the tent, something shifted, fragile yet real. She reached out, not toward him, but toward the lantern. Her fingers hovered near the flame, and for a brief second her skin shimmered once more. This time Daniel did not look away. He studied the light as it danced within her. It was beautiful, dangerous, and heartbreaking all at once. When I was little, she said quietly, my mother told me the light was a gift, but a gift too great for us. She said it would make us targets. She said I must hide it, always. Daniel swallowed hard, his mind painting the image of a young girl, forced into silence. And now you're alone, hiding from those who want to end you, he said softly. She nodded, a single tear slipping down her cheek. But why tell me this? Daniel asked, his voice gentle. Her answer came without hesitation. Because if I die tonight, someone must know who I was. The words cut into him deeper than any blade. Daniel leaned forward, his voice firm. You're not going to die tonight, not while I'm here. Her breath caught, and for the first time her eyes softened, truly softened. She looked at him as though he had torn down walls she thought would never break. The firelight shimmered in her gaze, making it glow like distant stars. Another snap echoed outside, closer than before. Daniel's head turned sharply, every instinct alert. The girl tensed as well, her glow vanishing as quickly as it had come. The hunters were near again, circling, waiting. But the air inside the tent was different now. It no longer felt like two strangers caught by chance. It felt like two souls bound together by secrets revealed and promises unspoken. Daniel gripped his weapon tighter. We'll face them, together, he said with quiet strength. The girl's lips parted, her breath shaky. Together, she repeated softly, as if the word itself was new to her. The jungle outside stirred, but inside the tent, a fragile bond had been forged. He had called her inside only to warm her, but in the firelight of that night, he had discovered something greater, not just who she was, but what she carried. And now, he knew, protecting her meant more than surviving the night. It meant standing against the darkness itself. The jungle outside grew restless. Every rustle of leaves, every shift of branches, carried the promise of danger. Daniel gripped his weapon tighter, his eyes never leaving the shadows moving against the tent walls. Beside him, the tiny alien girl sat stiff and silent, her ears twitching as though they caught sounds he could not hear. Her breath was shallow, quick, but her gaze remained sharp. She knew what was coming. They are here, she whispered, her voice almost breaking. Daniel gave a single nod, steady, calm, though his heart thundered in his chest. He rose to his feet slowly, his shadow stretching across the glowing canvas. The girl's hand clutched the lantern as if its small flame could hold back the darkness itself. Outside, a branch snapped, heavy footsteps circling, then another growl, deeper than before, closer, vibrating through the ground beneath them. Daniel crouched low, motioning to her. Stay behind me, he said firmly, but the girl shook her head, her eyes burning with defiance. If they take me, they will kill. You cannot fight them alone. Her voice was steady, despite the fear trembling at the edges. Daniel looked at her, saw the truth in her words, but refused to step aside. Then we fight together, he said quietly, before she could answer. The attack came. The tent shook violently as claws tore through the fabric, ripping it open. The fire outside flared as shadows burst into the clearing. Daniel raised his weapon and fired, the sound sharp and fierce, against the night. One of the creatures shrieked, a guttural sound that sent birds scattering from the treetops. But another lunged from the side, slashing at him with jagged claws. Daniel rolled aside, the blow missing him by inches. the girl cried out, her body glowing faintly as panic surged through her. For a moment her small frame seemed to burn with hidden light. One of the attackers froze, hissing, shielding its face. From the sudden brightness, Daniel seized the moment, striking hard. Forcing it back into the shadows, the tent collapsed halfway. Fabric sagging as more hunters tore through. Their eyes glowed with a sickly yellow, their bodies lean and twisted. They moved like wolves but with cunning far greater. Circling, waiting for an opening, the girl pressed herself against the broken frame of the tent, whispering words in her tongue. The glow inside her grew brighter, pulsing with each word. Daniel could feel the heat of it, even from where he stood. One of the hunters lunged again, aiming for the girl. Daniel intercepted, his weapon clashing against its claws. The impact rattled his arms, but he did not give ground. The creature snarled, snapping its fangs inches from his face. Daniel shoved it back with all his strength, his eyes burning with determination. "You're not touching her," he growled. The girl gasped, her glow bursting brighter. She raised her hands, and a sudden wave of light rippled outwards. It was not fire, not lightning, but something purer, sharper. The hunters staggered, hissing, their eyes shrinking from the brilliance. Daniel turned, in shock, his gaze locking on her small frame, trembling with power. She looked fragile, yet in that moment she was radiant, untouchable, but the light faded almost as quickly as it came. Her body sagged, and she dropped to her knees, gasping for breath. The hunters, realizing her weakness, surged forward again. Daniel rushed to her side, firing his weapon to keep them back. Each shot echoed through the jungle, sparks flying, claws clashing. Still, they pressed closer, relentless. Daniel knelt beside her, shielding her with his body. Her voice trembled. "I cannot hold it. It burns me. I cannot." He silenced her with a firm glance. "Then let me carry the fight," he said. Her eyes widened, searching his face. And for a moment, her fear broke into something else, trust. The hunters lunged once more, 3 of them at once. Daniel braced himself, weapon raised, ready to face death if it meant she lived. The world narrowed to the crack of his shots, the hiss of claws, the heat of the fire dying outside. The girl, weak but unwilling to fall, pressed her glowing hands against the ground. The earth trembled, a faint pulse spreading outward. The hunters faltered, their movements slowing. Daniel seized the chance, striking hard, driving them back into the night. When the last of them retreated, the clearing fell silent again. Only the soft crackle of fading fire and the girl's ragged breaths filled the air. The tent was ruined, fabric torn, the lantern dimming. Daniel dropped beside her, his chest heaving. "You're safe," he whispered, though his body ached from the fight. She looked at him, her eyes shimmering with tears. "You protected me, even when you should have run," she said softly. Daniel gave a tired smile, shaking his head. "I don't run, remember." Her lips curved, the faintest trace of a smile breaking through her exhaustion. She leaned against him then, small and fragile, her glow fading into nothing but warmth. For the first time since the night began, she let her pride rest and allowed herself to be held. Daniel wrapped his arm around her shoulders, steady and sure. He knew the hunters would return, stronger and more relentless. But for this moment, they had survived. Together, and in her eyes, he saw something change, a spark of faith in him. A bond forged in blood and fire. The night was far from over, but whatever came next, they would not face it as strangers anymore. They were allies, bound by survival, trust, and something deeper neither dared to name. And as the jungle shifted and the cold crept back in, Daniel realized the truth. He had not just saved her life, he had chosen it, and that choice would shape both of their destinies. The clearing lay in ruins, the tent was torn, the fire reduced to glowing embers, and the jungle echoed with the fading cries of the hunters. Daniel stood with his weapon still in hand, sweat dripping down his face, his breath heavy. Beside him, the tiny alien girl leaned against a broken post, her body trembling from exhaustion, but her eyes still glowing faintly. The fight was over for now, but both of them knew it was not the end. They will return, she whispered, her voice thin. Daniel glanced at her, his jaw set. Then we'll be ready, he said firmly. The girl shook her head, a bitter laugh escaping her lips. You cannot fight them all, they are endless. They will come until I am gone. Her words carried despair. But Daniel saw something else beneath them, a spark waiting to be reignited. He crouched in front of her, his voice steady. I don't care how many come. I won't let them take you. Her eyes widened, her breath catching, as she searched his face. No one has ever said that, she whispered. Her tone was soft, almost fragile, as though she feared the promise would shatter. Daniel's gaze did not waver. Then hear me now. I will not leave you, not tonight, not ever. The girl pressed her hands into the dirt, her glow flickering faintly as she tried to rise. Her small frame seemed too weak to stand, but her pride would not let her stay down. Slowly, she straightened, her shoulders squaring despite the tremor in her knees. You do not understand what I carry, she said, her voice sharpening. Daniel raised a brow. Then show me, he challenged. For a moment silence stretched between them. Then the girl closed her eyes, her lips moving in a whisper too soft to catch. Light pulsed beneath her skin, faint at first, then stronger, brighter. Her body glowed like a lantern, her small frame outlined with shimmering energy. Daniel stepped back slightly, shielding his eyes. The ground beneath them vibrated, and the air thickened, as if the jungle itself bent toward her. Her voice rose, trembling but clear. This is my curse, she said, light spilling from her fingertips. The glow expanded, filling the clearing with a pale radiance. The shadows of the trees stretched back, hissing, as if alive, from the depths of the forest. A new growl rose, louder, angrier. The hunters were not gone, they had only been waiting, and now they came. Again, drawn to her defiance like moths to flame. Daniel tightened his grip on his weapon. The girl's glow dimmed suddenly, her body swaying. She gasped. Clutching her chest, the light flickering out, Daniel rushed to her side, catching her before she fell. Easy, he murmured. Don't push it too far. Her eyes burned with frustration as she whispered, if I cannot fight them, what am I worth? Daniel's voice cut through her despair, sharp and certain. You're worth everything. You don't have to stand alone anymore. We fight together. Remember? Her lips trembled, and for a moment, her pride faltered. She leaned into him, small and fragile, but her eyes did not lose their fire. The jungle erupted as the hunters burst into the clearing once more. Their glowing eyes filled the darkness, their growls shaking the air. This time there were more, their twisted forms slinking from every shadow. Daniel stepped forward, planting himself firmly between them and the girl. His voice was steady, loud enough for her and the monsters to hear. You want her, you go through me. The first hunter lunged, claws slashing through the air. Daniel met it head-on, his weapon firing, sparks flying. The creature shrieked and stumbled back. But another replaced it instantly. Claws raked his arm, tearing fabric and skin. But he stood his ground. Pain burned through him, but his will burned brighter. Behind him, the girl cried out, her glow flickering again as her emotions surged. Daniel, she shouted, her voice breaking. He turned briefly, blood running down his arm. What? He barked, his eyes blazing. Her body glowed once more, brighter this time. I cannot control it, but maybe I can if you are with me, she said desperately. Daniel gave a sharp nod, his voice steady. Then let's do it, together. She placed her glowing hands against his back. Heat surged through him, a pulse of light and energy flooding his body. For a heartbeat, he felt as though the fire of the stars had entered his veins. His weapon blazed brighter, his movements sharper, faster. The hunters faltered, sensing the shift, their growls turning into uncertain hisses. Daniel struck with renewed strength, each blow driving the creatures back. The girl's power flowed through him, guiding him, amplifying him. Her small form trembled behind him, but her eyes blazed. She whispered words in her tongue, each one filling the air with light. The hunters shrieked, their forms dissolving into the shadows from which they came. When the last of them fled, the clearing fell silent once more. Daniel staggered, dropping to his knees, his chest heaving. The girl knelt beside him, her glow fading, her face pale. With exhaustion, "You could have died," she whispered, tears shimmering in her eyes. Daniel looked at her, his voice weak but steady. "Better me than you." Her hand shook as she pressed them against his wounds. "No," she said firmly, her pride breaking into raw emotion. "Not you, not after what you did for me." Daniel caught her gaze, and for the first time he saw not only pride, not only fear. He saw trust, unshakable and real. The jungle around them was quiet again, but the silence no longer felt empty. It felt like the calm after a storm, the pause before a choice. Daniel knew the hunters would not stop. They would return, again and again. But now he also knew something else. He and the girl were no longer two strangers fighting alone. They were bound by defiance, by survival, by something deeper that neither could yet name. And as she leaned closer, her small hand gripping his tightly, Daniel realized the truth. They had not just survived the night, they had declared war on the darkness together. The jungle was silent again. The air hung heavy with smoke from the dying fire, and the ground was scarred from the fight. Daniel sat against a broken piece of the tent frame, his body aching, his wounds still bleeding. Beside him, the tiny alien girl knelt, her glowing hands pressed gently against his arm. Each pulse of her light closed a cut. Each whisper of her strange language carried strength. "You should rest," she murmured softly, her voice trembling with both exhaustion and care. Daniel shook his head, his eyes scanning the dark trees. "Beyond the clearing, they might return," he said, his tone steady. The girl lowered her gaze, her long hair falling forward to hide her expression. "They will return," she whispered. "They always do. They never stop." Daniel reached out, his hand brushing her shoulder gently. "But this time, they didn't win," he said firmly, her eyes lifted, wide and uncertain. "You don't understand," she replied. "The more I use my power, the faster it destroys me. If I fight too long, the light will consume me." Her voice shook with fear, but there was something else, an unspoken plea for him to see her not as a weapon, but as a person. Daniel's gaze softened, his voice quiet, but strong. "Then we'll find another way. I don't care how strong they are. I'm not letting you burn yourself just to survive." The girl froze, staring at him as though no one had ever said such words to her. Her lips parted, and for a heartbeat, pride and pain warred in her eyes. "Finally," she whispered, Why do you care? You barely know me." Daniel leaned closer, his face lit by the faint glow of her light. "Because no one deserves to face the dark alone," he said simply. The words struck her harder than any blade. Her breath caught, and tears welled in her eyes, shimmering like starlight. For the first time, she let them fall. Her body sagged, and she leaned against him, her small frame trembling, not from fear now, but from release. The night stretched on, but the danger did not return. The hunters lingered in the jungle, but they did not strike again. Perhaps it was the girl's power that kept them at bay. Perhaps it was the sight of two souls standing together when they should have broken apart. Whatever the reason, the clearing remained theirs until dawn. As the first light touched the sky, the jungle awoke with new sounds. Bird-like creatures sang, and mist rose from the ground, glowing softly in the morning sun. Daniel pushed himself to his feet, wincing from his wounds, but standing tall. The girl watched him, her expression unreadable. Though her eyes followed every movement, he offered his hand, steady and open. "Come with me," he said. Her eyes widened. "Leave," she whispered, as though the idea was too large to hold. Daniel nodded. "Yes, leave this place, leave the hunters, find somewhere safer." Together, the girl's lips trembled, her pride resisting. her fear whispering doubts. But then she looked at him again, really looked, and in his eyes, she saw no lies, no hunger, only truth. Slowly, she reached out, placing her small hand in his. Her skin was cool, her grip fragile. Yet the moment it touched his, something stronger bound them. Not survival alone. Not chance, but choice. Her voice came soft, barely above a breath. I thought humans only took, but you give. Daniel smiled faintly, though exhaustion weighed on him. Maybe you've just never known the right one, he said gently. The girl's cheeks flushed, a faint glow touching her skin. She turned her gaze away quickly, but not before. He saw it, the spark of trust, the seed of something greater. Together they stepped from the ruined clearing. The jungle loomed around them, dangerous and vast, but no longer endless in its loneliness. The hunters still stalked in the shadows, but their presence no longer felt invincible. For now there was defiance. For now there was hope. A human and a tiny alien girl, walking side by side into an uncertain dawn. As they disappeared into the trees, the girl whispered softly, as though to herself, "You called me into your tent to warn me, and I thought nothing could come of it. But what happened next has changed everything." Daniel heard her, but he said nothing. Instead, he tightened his grip on her hand, his silence carrying a promise stronger than words. The jungle would test them again. The hunters would not stop. The battles ahead would be harder than the night they survived. But they were no longer strangers. They were allies, companions, maybe even more. And whatever the darkness planned, it would not find them alone, for the fire that burned between them would not go out. Not tonight, not ever.